So hey, it's top of the hour, so let's get rolling with this. So welcome everybody. Keep posting in the chat temperature and place and all that good stuff, and we may have some funny things to say about that. Who knows? Welcome to this month's Geek Out. It is February 25 for those of you watching later on. So this particular one is about a feature that we've been asked to implement for quite some time. And I'm happy to say that I think we've got a really nice implementation of a feature that we call Snapshot Locking. And what this allows you to do, as Sean will explain, is kind of raise your data protection level to a higher plane of existence, right? So you can do some really neat things with this that'll protect you from ransomware events, things of that nature. And there's also some really unique features in here that Sean's going to talk about that in the event of uh, uh, a breach or a ransomware attack, whatever you want to call it, it gives you the ability to kind of freeze your estate to make sure that nothing is getting rolled out. So a lot of times you're going to get asked by your cybersecurity team, hey, we need to make sure this whole thing is frozen so we can figure out what's going on. We have a really easy way to do that. But we have some security techniques that we're going to get into as well that I think are really, really important to make sure that this particular power is not abused, but also you're protecting yourself from somebody who even gets admin credentials in some cases from going in and deleting snapshots that would help you recover. So with that, I want to introduce my esteemed colleague, Field CTO at Tintri, Mr. Sean Meyer. Sean, take it away.
Well, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. And I always like it because I used to, my dad was a politics nut. So back in the day, we used to watch C-SPAN all the time. And you knew when someone called someone an esteemed colleague during that process on C-SPAN, it was actually an insult because they only called the esteemed colleagues the people on the other team. So you'll
The
feel
distinguished gentleman, right?
exactly. So yeah, my
Yes.
esteemed colleague
Well,
was
in
an
this case, we actually
gentleman.
like you.
Yes.
So
So
I
yeah, I was
won't
like,
throw that in
no,
the
you
chat,
call me.
but yeah.
Yes. So
If
yeah.
you like Sean, say yes in the chat. How about that?
Oh wait, here we go. A bunch of no's and thumbs in. Well, it's great to be
Okay,
here.
this is going sideways quickly. Sorry, Sean.
Yeah, been multiple geek outs. So let's go
Oh,
do a poll.
by the way, speaking of geek outs, I did not pimp our normal pimping, which we normally do, which is for participating in this particular geek out today. You are eligible to win one of these, and hopefully my camera. Oh, look at my cam. Oh, my background is red, so it does weird things.
Yeah.
So one of these, the Tintri branded switch. So we give these away at every one of these. So if you're registered and you attend, you're automatically put in the drawing. So look for your email after this to make sure that you either won or didn't win. So just check it. Make sure you check your spam folder because we'll try to get a hold of you if you are chosen as a winner. Okay, Sean, sorry.
All right. Well, yeah. So Matt, let's go ahead and put the other first poll real quick. Basically, just want to get some information about what everyone's running these days and what's going on with that. All right. So yeah, we have both polls up.
Yeah, for those of you who do not run Tintri today, the second one will be a little, not really useful for you, but the first one is really useful for us too.
Yes.
So we know kind of what people are running based on what our devices are connected to. But for those of you out there who aren't Tintriites or whatever you want to call us, Tintrians, we're very curious about trends in the marketplace because we like to develop for hypervisors that are up and coming as well as ones that are well established. So it gives us an idea of what we should be spending our time on in development. So this is a really, really good question.
And you notice that the first one is multi-select, so you can pick more than one.
Yes, yes. I'd be very curious to hear how many of you run multiple.
We should be able to do the math, as a derivative later on because we love doing math here. We
We
did
do.
Celsius to Fahrenheit math, and now we're going to do percentage math.
We were AI/ML before AI/ML was cool.
Correct.
Am I right?
We've been doing AI/ML since what 2014 when we started embedding
Long
it
time.
into the product. So you're talking
Long time.
over 10 years.
Yes. Longer than I've been here.
Back then, we used to call it just ML for machine learning, but nowadays everyone calls it AI, even though it's the same technology or same concepts.
You have to call it AI because it makes your stock go up. See NVIDIA. Nothing against NVIDIA, but I think, a lot of that is, marketing. So if Jensen's watching, Jensen, hey, no offense. I don't think he's watching. I'm looking at those. No, he's not watching.
Jensen
Okay.
will be on the our parent company DDN. Will be doing a press release and a kickoff of a brand new product line, a 2.0 version
Yes,
of our products, and Jensen will actually be in attendance on that webinar.
he will
So
be there.
you want to go see stuff
Yes.
like that, see that Jensen is actually going to be joining.
All right. So we're going to have about 30 seconds to finish the poll here. So let's finish this so we can move on with the content. So if you haven't done it yet, just do it real quick, and then we'll close this out. So any other interesting temperatures? Let's see here. No, I think we're done with the temperatures.
Let me get the Brainerd one.
Guillermo is saying something about football. I'm not sure what that's all about, but yeah. The numbers 13 and 10 come to mind. Only Guillermo know what that means. Let's see here. Let's see. All right, let's close out the poll and let's see what we got. Do we have the results? Hey, look at that. Okay, so VMware is still the dominant, and it adds up to more than 100%.
That means
So
someone is using
my
Hyper-V
keen math skills
in
tell me
VMware.
that some are picking both, right?
Yep.
No Zen server, which is interesting. So all XCP and G would also be, I guess, counted as Zen server, but there's no others either. So one of the ones we've been working on recently is XCP-ng, which is the open source version of Zen server. So that's interesting that nobody's running it yet. Curious. And then quite a few of you have already moved to 5.6, which is cool. Some of you are doing it this quarter. So all the things you're going to be seeing today are going to be running on 5.6, if I'm not mistaken, Sean.
That would
Is
be
that right?
correct.
Okay, good. So if you have not gone to 5.6, the things that you'll see today will require you going to 5.6. So, all right, Glas-DP.
Yep. So if you saw DP, so let's just do a step back. For those who are not aware, and you might have heard, if you've listened to Steve talk, he's covered this multiple times in some of his other geek outs. But Tintri, our founder was Irish, and Tintri basically is loosely Gaelic for lightning. And along the same realm, Glas, not glass, it's actually gloss, but most of the time I'm probably going to say glass. But most of kind of stuff actually stands for lock in Gaelic. So we're leaning into the same. Hey, we're Irish founding, so we're using some Irish terms for products instead of trying to think of a new name that we all know. We kind of need a process. So Glas-DP, the DP does stand for data protection. So it's a family of data protection features. So the snapshot locking part we're going to cover today is just first feature of many. There are many more tools in the pipeline, and as you talk to your sales teams, and your SCs, ask more about what's on the roadmap. There's a few things coming this year, but a lot more stuff coming next year. I know it's still early in the year. It's just that we have more ideas than we have ability to deliver on all our ideas, and we're working on as fast as we can. So as we know, ransomware is basically it's a security threat. We all have to deal with ransomware, and this is just another tool to add to your toolbox with Glas-DP and the snapshot locking to help you maintain, recover, protect, and just have better security and knowledge, and hopefully the sleep at night when things are happening. And of course, I always want to make sure everyone always remembers, compared to just about anything else out there from legacy storage process, locking a snapshot's done at the individual workload, whether that's going to be a VM, a container, or database process. We can still do all those snapshots at those different workload levels, which makes recovery very granular and makes your life simpler from that perspective. So snapshot locking, just some, end of the day is we're going to spend probably 5 total minutes of slideware, and then we're going to demo because we all like to look at this, watch slides and we get glazed in the eyes, but actually seeing it in action helps you understand and grasp or grok how it actually works.
Well, hopefully their eyes don't get glossed over.
Exactly. Did you do that on purpose?
I was just waiting for that.
Exactly, because I said glaze, you had to get some window glazing in there. All righty. So 5.6 CXOS basically came out. Actually, it came out last quarter in December, basically right at the end of the year. We snuck it in before some deadlines for some things, but we didn't start broadcasting it until early, basically this year. TXOS 5.6 and above has a lot of really cool features in it, or I say above, but 5.6 has some really cool features in it. The biggest one, we have snapshot locking. We've added support for IPv6. We've increased our Zen hypervisor compatibility. So we've actually got Zen hypervisor or Citrix hypervisor. They keep changing names like every other year. So once you memorize the Citrix stack, it's going to change to something else. So now it's basically on feature parity with Hyper-V. Doesn't quite have the same integration it does with what this VMware does, but it's very, very close. process. There's a few other things, a lot of security enhancements, some improvements to our SSO, all those kind of fun things. Feel free to go read the release notes for those who haven't upgraded to it, but we highly recommend everyone to come up there. There are multiple different things. All right. But so next thing on snapshot locking, what it is, again, it allows the object level, or in this case, most of the time, we're going to talk about VMs, the VM level object to be snapshot, to be locked. And you can do that during your schedule process, i.e., if you already have a schedule in the settings for the VMs, it's going to lock it that way. Or you can take an individual snapshot and lock it. And the reasons why between the different two methods on that, the individual one is, so say I have a snap that I don't want ever to go away, I can lock that thing and then not have it go, process. Also, I can keep it, prevent anyone from accidentally deleting it too. Sometimes we have some people who have legal requirements, AKA we all have HR issues, whatever happened kind of stuff. And I need to keep a known good state for somebody's, you'll say their VDI process. And I can basically do that and make sure, it takes, different processes with it. And we'll walk on the next slide, kind of the concepts of how it works. And of course, we also provide a method to pause all snapshot deletion. So when a customer gets hit by ransomware, usually the first question they do, they call us up support, and the first thing it goes, I want to stop all deletion of all snapshots. And we've offered an API way of doing that, which has not been so simple. Now we made a method in here, so you can go in now, stop all deletion, and space wise, you got split. When you stop all deletion and you continue to make new snapshots, you will run out of space eventually. So make sure use that with caution. But
So you didn't say this explicitly, but I think what you were trying to get to is we had a method to do it. It was a little complex. It used an API. Now it's in the UI.
exactly.
So it's a click thing.
Yep. Makes it easier for you. And
Right.
Has less support calls, which is always a fantastic thing for all of us. All right. So regular lock snapshots basically will expire on their schedule. And so as long as so that way, some people worry when we first started locking snapshots, it's going to take a lot more space. Lock snapshots will expire on a schedule. So if it's your snapshot's supposed to last for 7 days, 12 days, whatever you set it for, it's locked. You can't delete it earlier. All that basically what that means. It still deletes over a period of time. And then an escalation is required if you want to basically delete it sooner, aka I need a two-factor authentication process to help that happen. And we'll walk through how that works and how we just structured that. How we did this, we created two new security roles inside of that. So basically two different users, DPA and DPEA. DPA, data protection admin. This is the person who can actually lock the snapshots. The DPA can do things like this, and only a DPA user can lock snapshots. So in other words, we're not going to have every user out there allow you to lock things. And the DPEA, the escalation admin, which is DPEA, basically is the one who can basically grant permissions to do removal. The DPA user does not do any removal themselves. What it is, they grant a period of time where the DPA user, the data protection admin, can now go ahead and remove snapshots. Again, as I mentioned, snapshots expire and are deleted on the normal retention schedule. And then, as I said, pausing will fill up your VMstore. Be cautious, be wary of that. And again,
hopefully you're not running so high in utilization that you would run into danger with this, especially if you have a very churny workload, if that's a word. But it's something you do have to be aware of. So some customers do run a little high in terms of utilization. Now we have drive-by-drive expansion, so we can help you fix that. But in the case where you are running out, you just want to be very aware that could occur if you turn off automatic snapshot deletion, because it especially if you have a lot of churn. I mean, it can happen fast.
Yes. And it depends on what you're ready to change really comes down to. And the other thing too is that when the VM store reaches 95%, so 95% basically new snapshots are stopped. So you're not creating new snapshots, but again, if I haven't deleted them, I'm still making changes or having new data be ingested, my growth rate will still do that, and you can still run out of space. And one of the best things about the VM store, and also one of the worst things about the VM store, is we run at 100% performance, basically at 95% capacity. Compared to most of our competitors, they tend to slow down once you get above 80%, and it starts really dropping out by 90%. So you can never fill it up. The VM store works so great, you could fill it up because the performance never slowed down. So that's why we make
I actually had a customer bring that up one time, and they said we were expecting it to slow down so we would notice that it was getting full, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, and they
So it took them by surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, that's the problem. We have to design features sometimes. I work on the product team. We've actually had to design some features to make it harder for you to drive into a brick wall. We figured that shouldn't be needed, but apparently sometimes it is because the VM store works so well in so many different ways. All right, demo time. This is my favorite part of the process because I don't like slides either. All right, so we're gonna do setup first. So TGC, I'm gonna do, I have multiple different TGCs up here at different levels. This one doesn't have it set up versus the other one has it set up. So I actually have some snapshots with locks in there. The other day, settings. I now have a protection tab, but first things I have to go into my local users first and create a new user. And there's actually on our support on the website for support where you download TXOS, there's actually a basically a snapshot locking basically primer guide up there too. Plus it's all inside of our admin guides.
Yeah, it's very handy. If you guys have access to the support portal, it's actually a really handy document. So
I mentioned there's two new roles, data protection admin and data protection escalation admin. You do not see the data protection escalation admin listed here. The reason why is that account is created automatically for you once you go ahead and create, basically enable the feature. So once they go in DPA admin kind of process, you create the account for the role process, and you assign a password to it. And it would help if I can learn how to type. There, match. Kind of process, hit save. It's here. The fun part is that data protection escalation admin account is still not created. It doesn't get created until I actually go enable it or turn it on. But now I can go log in to do this because if I go into protection, I actually have new things, but the edit buttons are grayed out. I cannot click on these things because only the data protection administrator can turn on data protection and basically or snapshot locking. So now I'm going to have to log out and log in as my DPA user I just created.
yeah, fun fact, if you hover over the edit button, it actually will show you why you can't click it.
Oh, yeah, forgot. See?
Right there.
Requires this role. So now I can go in here, still can't click, but hit edit, go ahead and allow it's disabled. I'm gonna go turn it on just one VMstore to start off with, and then go hit save.
So this is just enabling the feature.
Exactly. And what does TGC is actually doing some recording, then it goes out and calls the VMstore and makes some changes on the VMstore as well. So the VMstore actually is doing some changes too. And the fun part now, which is one of the things that I like and I don't like, basically, if I go back to local users, I don't have permissions. So basically, a data protection administrator has all the rights and responsibilities as an admin does, except you can't manage users. And we did that, we spent a lot of time walking through the logic of it. Basically, is we don't want people trying to, like a DPA person going in and trying to edit the DPEA account, blah, 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 that kind of stuff and those features. So it makes it more difficult for someone in the process to do that. So now, if I log back out of here, I can hover over and log out and log back in as admin again.
And while you're doing that, it's kind of an obstacle as well that you'd have to get around in order to kind of fudge this whole system, right? So you're locking out certain accounts from doing certain operations, and you have to do things in a certain order with all the credentials, right? So I would argue that's better for a security standpoint. It's almost like some built-in air gaps that you've got to make sure that one account can't do everything, right? So I actually like the way it was architected.
Yeah. And that's what's designed to. We've actually put, it's kind of like speed bumps, or even heck, I mean, back, my dad used to work for the Air Force, and they used to design buildings around the computers because computers were much bigger back then, especially on the new command side of the house. And they made it so Office A, which is next door to Office B, you couldn't walk between the two of them because in the day of if something was compromised, you had to walk up a flight of stairs, over and then down a flight of stairs to get to the building because the computer was more important than the people. Very interesting things for those who've ever been to Offutt Air Force Base. So you can now see the user here, but again, I as an admin cannot make changes to this user. I can't delete this user. Once this account exists, you cannot remove it. Basically, so once you turn on data protection or basically snapshot locking, it's something you're going to be done with. You can't turn it off. Or you can turn it off, you just won't ever be able to clean up all the artifacts from it. So you want to go into the VM store itself in the settings and go look at my protection tab. My management access, you can now see there's a DPA user here too. as process as well. And of course, I can add users, but I cannot get rid of this user. I can play with this user and change things, but I cannot do other things for this kind of process. So the DPA user is a special account and it's created. The admin guide will tell you the password because it has a default password when you create it because we create it for you. So obviously the first thing you should do once you go ahead and create it is log in as DPA user. It is case sensitive, so make sure you do, probably that. Follow the password in the guide, and then you need to go change the password for that process. But we're not going to do that today. I just want to show you the setup of things and how that all works. So this is my setup lab to show you how that all works, process and bring you. And since I don't actually, I need to do this demo multiple times, I'm actually going to revert, which of course means I'm going to oops, do something you should probably never, ever, ever do. I'm going to go revert my TGC. Um, you don't
Yes.
have to
Do
do it.
not do this unless you know exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. So I'm going to go basically revert the snapshot because I want to be able to do this demo and show the creation process again to other people. So I'm going to go to my hourly schedule snapshot. And the reason why you should never do this is basically the way the security mechanism between TGC and the VM stores. There is actually some rolling key processes in there that we keep secret. And that if you do this too much, you're going to eventually run into a problem that you'll probably lose some of your configuration things. You don't lose it all, but just like if you had a ransomware attack, you'd still be able to do recovery over time kind of process. But we're just going to close this down because we're done with it, and it's going to do all its work in the background.
So for those of you not familiar, that's called Sync VM,
Yeah,
and that's a very unique feature of the Tintri platform where you can revert any VM, including management plane VMs like TGC, back to a previous state. So in the case of ransomware, for example, you can pick a certain point in time, revert all your VMs back to that point once you know what that point is, right? And that's one of the key things that we talked about earlier about maintaining snapshots and making sure they don't roll off. You don't know exactly where that point is when the incident happens, right? So essentially, he just reverted that VM back to a previous state at 9:30ish, whatever that was, and it happened within a few seconds. So
all right. So I'm going to go finish up on this one here. If you notice, I've got two VM stores, one without. Actually, we're going to set this up later. I've got three set up, but only one has it enabled, two have it disabled. And then the data protection escalation admin. Basically, when you're logged in as that person, you can go in and make changes to go say, hey, this person has an escalation process, can go do things until a set period of time. And so what it is a time period. So the escalation admin logs in, grants that person a permission to go do the escalation admin grants the data protection admin rights to go delete for X period of time. And they can make it very short or they can make it very long. Obviously, the shorter the better processes. Also with that, with external accounts, let me go log back in as admin so I can go see accounts. So the fun things about switching back and forth is making sure I always have the right screen up.
well, again, this is what we talked about, right? You want to try to silo those permissions as much as possible. So being able to have you have to have all the credentials to do these things instead of maybe one credential that was compromised. You'd be able to wipe out everything, right?
Right. And so here you can use external accounts and give them those roles and have them linked to your Active Directory. Now, we're going to pause here and make sure you think through all that. It sounds great. It sounds fantastic. But if you have a ransomware attack, now that also means you might have your ransomware might attack your domain controller, and now all your passwords in your domain controller are compromised. So now they still have a way to get in here. Because one of the biggest features about this, when not deleting of snapshots, is the fact of customers who use basically use VMware process. Hey, I can see all the snapshots that Tintri has from a vSphere console now or to the old days before this, you could actually go delete all those snapshots. Even though our snapshots are immutable and unchangeable, you can still delete them. This way, with the lock snapshot, you cannot delete those. Those snapshots are still going to hang out for you.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point, Sean, because you have to assume that in ransomware planning, you have to assume that the first attack vector that they're going to use is AD, and specifically domain admin within AD, right? So if you have anything connected that could potentially be changed with AD credentials or domain admin credentials within AD, that's a vulnerable attack vector, right? So having local accounts on here is something that I would recommend, and then keeping those passwords separate. Could you do this? Yes. Is it a best practice? That's up to you. But to me, that's the very fertile attack vector for typical ransomware attacks.
All right, so let's get on to locking of individual snapshot. So let's go to manage objects. You notice I am logged in as admin. So I'm going to go do some filtering here because, well, I only have the one VM store with it enabled. So let's go filter down to that one VM store. And then, whoops, kind of process here. So now you can see these are the VMs I have on here. Right click, actions, whoops, sorry. I'm over. Snapshots, you can see multiple snapshots, actions, take a new snapshot. Hey, take snapshot. I got a new snapshot. You notice it says locked, not locked. Lock, it's grayed out. I'm the admin. Versus I log back in as the DPA role. Back same screen, kind of process. I can go to any existing snapshot here, for example, and I can clearly choose lock the snapshot. And now we'll update the lock. So, all different manual snapshots. And if I go take a new one, I still have the same screen as the other, as an admin does, i.e. take snapshot by default is not locked, and I go in and click lock. That's the process for locking snapshots. That makes sense to everybody? I hope so. The next question people tend to have basically is going to be around service groups. So how do I want to do this around processes, or you make settings kind of stuff? So I can actually set it all up that way. So service groups, I'm going to go through here. I've got a snapshot locking service group up here. When you create this process, you'll create the service group, you'll walk through it just like any other service group. You can see my managed objects here. I have my CRM ones, and we see ones here with warning flags on it. If I click on that for the policy error, it says the VM store which this VM resides does not have snapshot locking enabled. As you remember, when I had it earlier with the VM store, that one was not, one VM store or two had snapshot locking enabled, the other two did not. This VM happens to reside in one of those, and it gives me a warning flag here in my service group, let me know that that one does not have my locking process going. All right, so in the service group settings, let's go hit some edit here. Process, you can see basically when I'm drilling down, I'm doing hourly snapshots. I want to go add daily snapshots, and then I can click on the three dots and then have it click this disable manual deletion of snapshots, delete only when they expire. So now I've made it here. You can see if I add weekly, but don't do that, the snapshots for the weekly snapshots are not locked. Only my hourly and my daily are. You have these kind of process inside of my service group settings. Works the same way as service groups work for everything else. This way, again, I can make protection levels as granular as I want to and protect the ones I need versus the ones I don't want. It's really up to you. And I can go back and edit this later on. I go to hourly here and remove the flag, and then hit done, and then go hit save. Oh, I do not have the permission for me to go make changes to this. I must now go have the DPEA user, as in the escalation admin, grant me rights to go remove changing permissions on what's locked and not locked. That's one of those things when you first start playing with this, it can get confusing on when you have rights, when you don't have rights. But at the end of the day is the DPA user or the data protection admin can basically create locks. And the only time you can remove any lock is you're going to have the escalation right.
Yeah, think of it like a padlock, right? Anybody can lock a padlock, but you have to have the key or the combination to unlock it.
Yep.
Right?
Correct. So let's go ahead and put the lock back on because I wanted to have the extra locks on here and hit save. So now if I go to VMstore manage objects, all those were basically the CRM ones in here. If I pick one of the ones on the right one, which I did, go to snapshots. Again, you can see locked, locked, not locked kind of stuff. And the scheduled ones are not locked versus some of these are locked in different ones. And so if I go to delete them, obviously it's not going to let me try to delete these. Right click and delete. It's going to give me my nice little error saying cannot delete snapshot. Versus if I pick one that's locked, obviously actions and delete, it allows me to go ahead and delete them as normal. So let's go now log in as a DPA user and go do the escalation process. I think I have it over here. Oh, I do not. It's closed. All right, so let's bring it up and log out again. One of the fun things about TGC is the fact that as it times out for you.
Yeah, the other cool thing is it starts you on the same page when you do that. So
yes.
it's easy to switch users and continue the same task. So Typos never happen in demos. It's fine.
Well, actually, what it was, I was typing the default password because the one I set up at the beginning was using the default. I didn't change it. This one I've already changed because I'm a good person and follow all my security rules.
Yes. Change the
No,
default password, please.
yes,
Yes. Talk about an attack vector.
yes. So now, again, I can go in here and I don't have the option to lock or delete. I can try to delete this one, but as a DPA user, I still can't delete it because I can't delete snapshots. I can only go into basically my settings and then protection. And now down here, I can go in, allow data protection mission, unlock snapshots. So basically, I'm going to allow this. I have to go specify time. We're going to go specify one thing I don't find, but I click this, it comes to the last time I did this. So I think we're going to add a button to it in the next version of this to automatically go to today.
Go to today. Yeah.
It does go there, but it's not quite as fast as you want it to be. And then until 2 p.m. What time is it now? It's 1:30. Wait, this is Pacific time anyway, so we're good to go. And then I will specify which VMstore it's on. So you can also, by the way, you notice it says enabled, even though it says disabled up here and it's enabled in here. End of the day is again, as I mentioned, you can't truly remove things, even though I had it here, I disabled it. Since I've done an escalation on this before, that flag is always going to be set because that DPEA user account does not go away. So once you enable it, that account's there for life. Which is why you still see it here. So we're going to hit save here. So I can't add the escalation when I don't have the permission. It's not turned on. So now it's going to go do this process. Come on, there it goes. Now to do a delete though, I'm going to log out, log back in as DPA. Again, once you start playing with it for a while, it's going to be much smoother. When you first start doing things, it seems a little clunky, seems to process. And I know it literally works through it. So let's go to the VMstore side of the house, because we can see it from here too. For the VMstore, basically instead of being up in all managed objects here, I'm going to VMstores and settings. This is basically pulling the stuff right from the VMstore UI directly. You can still see the protection. It says my default stuff's now labeled, but the allowed data protection is enabled. Kind of pros. This is also where you do the pause, deletion. So if I need to go turn off on this VMstore, I want to pause all this. I can do that at the TGC level or the VMstore level. Let's go back to the TGC level settings and show that as well, protection wise. I should have covered that when I was here earlier. Or no, it is at the VMstore level. My bad.
Yeah, that's at the VMstore level.
Yep. Sometimes, yeah. That's the problem with the settings. Sometimes I get confused on which level things are at.
I think once you get the flow down, it's easy to kind of manipulate.
Yeah.
But you're right. The flow being a little unfamiliar is a little daunting at the beginning. But I think once people get used to it, personally, I don't see any downside to locking snapshots by default. Right.
Sure.
I don't see a downside of that. So it's kind of something that most people, I think, would probably implement as a best practice. That'd be my guess. Yes, does it add a couple of layers of administration into recovery and or ransomware remediation, things like that? Yes, but I think that's a good thing, right? Especially if you're connected to AD and you've got accounts that can go in and possibly delete things. I think adding this layer of protection is a big deal. And if you bring this up to your cybersecurity insurance company, who knows? They may lower your rates because they see it as less of a risk because you are creating immutable snapshots on your system that create these extra layers of authentication that's required to go in and delete them. So to me, Sean, maybe you disagree. I don't see any downside to this.
No,
other than the couple of extra accounts you have to deal with that are local, right?
Yeah, and to really depend. I mean, if you're a customer that you're always running out of space and you're deleting snapshots that you kind of want to keep all the time, then maybe it becomes more of a pain, because you have to go through the escalation process. But you shouldn't be running that close on your basically your space capacity, anyways.
Yeah, and with of course with Tintri VMstore, that's a very easy problem to solve, right? Yeah. You pop a drive in there, you click a button, you've got more space, right? So that's something that can be planned for. But unfortunately, we're talking about events you can't plan for, or you can plan for them, but you have to react when they happen, right?
Exactly. And so
right.
you can't Oh yeah, can I go back in time and lock these snapshots? Nope, it's too late. Once the nefarious actors in the environment, you cannot go back and undo things. So yeah,
Yeah, and just from my own personal experience, I had a customer recently that had thousands and thousands and thousands of VMs, and one of the things that we had to do right off the bat was stop automatic deletion, right? Because the remediation company said, look, we got to stop everything from being deleted because we don't know what's what, right? So we had to go through a fairly complicated process on several VM stores, a lot, to go in and do that. Whereas in this case, you could just click a button and it's taken care of, right? And of course, they didn't have lock snapshots either, so that was another thing that would have been a benefit.
yep. So now, of course, you can see I actually have a column for my snapshot lock. So obviously my overview tabs, the lock right here kind of basically is a new checkbox process to know things. So you can add and remove it. By default, it's on. Once you turn DPA on, all your default views automatically get updated. If you have customized views, speaking of, if you don't have customized views, I suggest you create your customized views because they are so much nicer. But if you don't, but if the default views are automatically added to the lock, and that way I can now see on the VM store where my snapshots are, which ones are locked, which ones are not. So delete snapshot, so I can go to here, right click, delete, no big deal. And of course, pick the other ones, can't delete them. Actually, now since I now have the escalation admin until 2 p.m., I can go here and now delete because it says yes. And
Well, you have to unlock it first.
oh,
Again, another layer of obfuscation, if you will.
yes, so you gotta unlock
Yep.
it first, then hit refresh, and then you can go ahead and delete it. Did I lose it? Which one was which? But yeah, so
I think it was that one.
yeah, I think it was this
Yeah.
one. But the had server
Yep.
locked, it automatically moved it for me because
Right. Right.
the fun part. Now I can go delete. But yes, because you can never delete a lock snapshot, to unlock first and then do your delete process. All right. Any questions from anyone? Feel free to type them into the chat so we can answer those and walk through the process. So next thing we're gonna do basically is all right. So most of you, well, actually, let's do a poll real quick. How many are using the remote vCenter client plugin?
Do we have a poll for that,
Oh,
Mr.
we have a poll
Producer?
for that. Do we have one set up?
I think we might.
Or which one? Sorry.
The next poll.
Do you use the remote vCenter client plugin? Technically, the vSphere client plugin.
Yeah, give me 1 moment,
Okay.
and I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. So yeah, at the end of the day, basically, if you guys haven't played with the vSphere client plugin, it's highly recommended for VMware environments. Obviously, it's a VMware client plugin, so it only works with VMware, stating the obvious kind of processes. But that way I can now do a lot of Tintri cool things I can do basically from the VMware side. I can do from here. And actually, before we get too far down this path, I want to do one more thing in here. I wanted to show you my replication processes. So you notice in the service group here, replication, I actually have settings. Oh, it is I manage, the managed objects here. I've got these 4 here. The snapshots are being locked. This one's being locked, not being locked. This one's being locked, and it's replicating over to the other VM store. So let's go to that VM store real quick before we go to RVCP and look at the different objects here. So snapshots wise, you can see all these are synthetics. Even though they're being replicated, the lock state does not replicate over because this one does not have it enabled. But also, when we replicate a snapshot, the lock is not a flag we're currently replicating. We're going to add that at some point in the future, but as of today, the flag itself is not. I just wanted to show that, but I can still do replication. So obviously, we want you to be able to protect your data from having multiple locations. And then if this had it enabled, I can go in here and then now go lock this here, which is what I'm going to do now. Is going to go under settings, protection, edit, and then go add the setup for my 07 VM store.
So Sean, the poll is only 13% are using the plugin. That's actually kind of surprising.
Yeah.
I would expected it to be more, but it's a great little tool.
Yes. So if you haven't used it, definitely look into it. I know I've talked to multiple clients who don't use it just because we don't allow the delete. We don't have a snapshot locking feature. So hopefully those customers are now going to start using it because they want to make sure if their VMware environment ever got compromised, they don't have access to the storage but now with the snapshot locking, I can't do that. So let's go in here. All right. We're going to play with this, more objects, so I can go see all my snapshots here. And the one thing we do have a small bug is obviously I don't actually have my um, lock feature in here yet. It's coming in on a future release, but it's not here today. So let's go back here to figure out which ones are which. So VMstores, 06, my snapshots. All right, so lock 3 VM, so at 8:11 a.m. Lock 3 VM, 8:11. This one. So we know this one is not locked. I can right click. I can go here, specify this one, and delete and remove. And that one, the 8:11 one is now missing. So let's go find one that's locked and see what happens. And we're going to show you some dirty laundry right now because we have a small gap here. For example, this 905 lock VM, it's the hourly and it is locked. So lock one VM at 905, go back over to here. I'm going to lock one VM, the 905. I'm going to right click this one. I'm going to go in their actions and choose delete and it hit remove and it refreshes. And I scroll back down, lock one VM at 905 and hey, look, it's still here. It doesn't delete it because it can't, but it doesn't give you an error because it can't.
It silently fails.
Yes, it suddenly failed, which is a bad thing. So,
Right.
so basically, we do have a bug
Right.
request on that one to go resolve this. We're going to add the lock flag into here, and then also have the, basically when it fails to delete, it's going to actually let you know about it. So again, showing some dirty laundry, just making you aware, because if you what, I'd rather tell you the bad news ahead of time, so you don't go, huh, there's a bug and go report it. But yes, so if you're not using the RBCP, I definitely highly recommend using it. It is a fantastic tool. It does allow you to learn, look, and see things, from managing all my VMstore actions from here. So I can do my snapshots. I can do cloning. In fact, actually, all these locked VMs here exist because I took this VM here, one of these snapshots here. Sorry, I always like to right click. It's VMware. I can't right click and do clone, and I mail my clones from inside of here instead of having to log out of log into TGC to go do it. I can do many of our features, and the customers who use the RBCP client on a regular basis, some of them get to the point where they don't remember how to log into TGC anymore because they just get it all from here. Because I can actually get my, my summary processes in here, my charts. I can't quite drill down to the same level, but a lot of the basic things are in here already. And so they look at here for their default screens and not going into TGC to go look at all these informations for performance metrics. So just letting you know.
Yeah, it's a great way to get to the high level information. So I'm being told that the poll kind of flashed and didn't really get a ton of response because it was maybe too quick. We've had a bunch of people in the chat say they'd use the plugin, so maybe the adoption rate is a little higher than we thought. The distinguished gentleman Magnus, who's a famous Tintri fanboy, and thank you for Magnus for joining. He definitely uses it, so he can wax poetic about how good it is.
I can
but I think
relaunch the poll if
no,
y'all
it's
like.
okay. It's all right.
Okay.
We don't have to do that. I think it just happened fast enough and people didn't see it, so that's okay. But we're being corrected in the chat that there is a lot more usage than we thought. So that's good.
Yeah, so great to hear because the plugin's fantastic. Again, I showed you a bug, so please don't but yeah, we're going to work on that. The next one is probably going to be out. Well, I'm not going to make any promises. We're just going to stop talking on that subject. All right, that's
hey. There's crazier bugs than that. I mean, that's pretty benign. So yeah, the fact that it doesn't let you delete it is important. But we'll work on getting the notifications right.
Yep. And so the biggest thing, if I try to go need to turn this off feature, obviously I need to be an escalation admin to do that, but also I need to actually remove all lock snapshots. I'm not sure why anyone would ever want to need to disable it, but for example, as I showed you, if I want to go disable this process, the first thing I can do is my snapshots. I need to go make sure I unlock every single snapshot in here, which you can't do that by a service group process. So you're going to be in there, right click, you do. So I'm not going to go through that demo because I don't have that kind of time to go through and unlock over and over and over again in the demo to get that to happen process.
Well, I would argue, Sean, just a second. I would argue that I would consider that most of the time where you would go in and try to unlock snapshots on bulk like that would be a malicious act, right? So making that hard to do, I think, is actually a good thing. Again, there's no downside to locking things, but making it hard to unlock it, to me, seems like you're protecting that data kind of at a higher level, right? Because that's the first thing that I would do if I had the permissions, is I want to go in here and unlock everything so I could delete it. But
Yep.
making it so that it was difficult to do in bulk, I think would actually be a feature, not a bug, right?
Yep.
Just my 2 cents. I mean, I feel free to disagree on the chat, but
And a comment here, can't multi-select. Actually, you can multi-select. You're right. So of course you can either sort by locked and not locked. Let's go to the other VMstore.
Right.
I'm gonna come back over here. Let's sort. Let's just hit
let's see if this works.
4 of these in a row, and then actions and unlock. And you're right, you can multi-select and unlock it.
Does it work?
Yep.
Oh, it's going to resort it.
Yep. Maybe so
Okay.
have it sorted by that. So if I did it just
Okay.
by created time, and then we'll do it this way to make sure it's easier. So these two are the locked ones, and then this one, and then right now actions and unlock. And we'll see all 3 of those update to no's. So yes, you
Okay.
can
So
do that.
you still have to multi-click, but
Right.
yes. Okay.
Because in reality, I mean,
Fair enough.
this is the demo box. You can see I only have this many VMs on it. I'm pretty sure most of you, your VM stores look more like, some of the other ones I have on here with, multiple pages of things. This is just also a small one too. This is, these are kind of my isolated, I have different labs. This is my isolated lab for doing kind of destructive testing. So I'm going to go break things in here so I don't have a lot of stuff. So yeah, it would still take a long time to multi-select and get through it all.
So Keith had an interesting question in the Q&A. Does this integrate into vCloud Director?
So vCloud Director is definitely on our roadmap. It is not something we've completed yet. So we don't have a Tintri plugin for the vCloud Director.
Excellent question. Thank you, Keith. These are the kind of things that help us figure out what kinds of things we should be doing. So I appreciate that.
Yes, it's definitely on our roadmap. I don't have any ETAs on it right now, but it's on our roadmap, and we definitely want to do that. There are multiple of our customers who are asking for that as well.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So that's
but again,
really,
we take feedback very, very seriously. So if you have, not just in this forum, right? I mean, we definitely love questions in this forum too. But if outside of this forum, if you have questions or suggestions on what we should be working on because you have a certain feature that you might want to use or whatever, send it our way. I mean, you can find us out there. Our contact information is out there. So happy to hear it. Brock says you can send to productfeedback@tintri.com. That's an even easier way to do it. So that goes directly to our CTO team, including Brock, and we can get that integrated and get it prioritized. So thank you, Brock, for that clarification.
all right, back to slideware, unless we have some more questions we want to walk through.
No other questions at the moment.
Okay. I need to fix my monitors one of these days. All right. So quick limitations. For those who are familiar with high frequency snapshots, this does not currently work with high frequency snapshots. Same thing with service groups for SRM. We're adding that, and also we did not scope this with the quota service groups. We don't see a lot of customers using it, but the ones who do are very adamant about using it. So we want to make sure we keep those. And we were discussing when we're going to add this for quota service groups. And common questions. Again, I got to recover this one. Lock replicate. When I replicate, does the lock replicate? And the answer is not yet, but it's going to. Can I render individual snapshot from being deleted? Basically, when you create a manual snapshot, there's no deletion schedule, so it's going to stay there forever. Now, if I lock a manual snapshot, it's never going to happen. That deletion is not going to go away until you have the escalation admin get involved. You'll do the escalation, unlock it, and then you delete it. So be careful about locking manual snapshots because basically you're saying I want to create more processes on keeping these long term. If I need to keep it long term, i.e., if I have a regulatory requirement to keep something forever, that's a great way to make sure no one accidentally deletes it either, because now you have multiple steps in before you do that process. Can I lock snapshots via the API? The answer is absolutely. One of the amazing things about the UI we have, our UI does not talk to the VMstore directly. Our UI always goes through the API. Granted, there's some undocumented commands that we won't share on how our UI talks to the API, but everything from you're seeing here, there are API commands for that, and we do continue. You can go to the API and figure out how to go that, and you can do all your locking. So you can write your own scripts to do your lock and unlock processes if you want to. And lastly, whoops, does this use more space on the VM store? And the answer is absolutely not. So yes, if a snapshot sits down forever and you do a lot of change, you're going to have more growth of space. But the locking itself does not make that snapshot any larger or smaller. There's no extra space used by it. It is not a separate copy. It is not anything else. So our snapshots are still our snapshots. All we're doing here basically is adding the flag to make it so you can't delete that snapshot. But we still give you a process to go ahead and still remove it when you need to or you want to.
So Magnus asked an excellent question, and I don't know the answer. Will SnapLock protection be resilient against NTP pollution, i.e. is there reverse time protection in each snapshot?
You mean if somebody hacked the system, for example, and reverse?
If somebody forwarded the clock to
Right,
go beyond the
clock
expiration, for
process.
example.
So
Yeah.
we've talked about that, and the answer, of course, on a manual snapshot, no, those won't be because there's no schedule for it. But yes, if you forward, if you basically compromise the VM store enough that you can go ahead and adjust the clock, you're going to these snapshots will still expire, and you still can remove them that way. So
Interesting.
we'll think about a way of flagging how far the clock can move from a SKU perspective, but we haven't implemented anything of that in nature yet. But
that's why I love the tint-free hive mind, right? There's so many things that you just kind of slip and maybe you don't consider it or whatever, and then somebody comes up and says, well, what about this, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh yeah, and of
Thank
course,
you, Magnus.
if you do and granted, if your VM store is compromised enough that they're going ahead and changing, your clock, odds are they'll have the abilities to compromise the other areas to go ahead and get the DPEA rights granted to them anyways. So anyway, those fun things about things, but when you go build a way to protect against something, but you're already how do I say this? When you go to protect about something, sometimes that protection doesn't do any good because the person who's compromised you already has the rights to do that anyways.
Yeah, I think that's another reason you've got to air gap as many things as you can, especially admin roles on devices like these, right? And integrating those into AD is inherently dangerous. So between that and your NTP infrastructure, I think those would be two things you might want to consider air gapping.
Yes.
So, yep. That's a great question. Thank you, Magnus.
And
hey, a branded Nintendo Switch. So we already talked about this earlier. Everybody who's here is automatically entered. And then, so just watch your clutter, spam, whatever other folders are out there today, and see if you might have been picked as our winner. We do have a few minutes left. If there are any additional questions, we'll have them throw it up there.
Had another comment that let's go address that.
Yes.
So basically, we have another product called TEC, which is Tintri Cloud Engine, which basically allows you to have a virtual VM store. It's a container-based VM store that sits up in the cloud. Which you can now replicate your snapshots to that. Granted, when I have a snapshot in the cloud, I still need to replicate it back on-prem to utilize it again. But the cool thing is I can have a separate authentication method for that, meaning it's not the same username and password for the on-prem VM store. So it's kind of like that air gapping process because now it's basically in a different authentication domain. Okay, it can be in a different authentication domain to make it more difficult. So that's definitely one of the options out there process-wise of doing that.
Yep, many different ways to air gap, for sure.
Exactly.
Yep, the more the better, right? Yep, the more obstacles you can place in front of some very clever people, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide real quick.
Sure.
I think we're talking about some of the future things we're doing. So we do have another Geek Out coming up in March. Topic TBD, time TBD. So just watch your inbox for that if you've signed up for updates from us, which I assume most of you have because you're here. We also have KubeCon in Europe coming up at the first week of April, which we're really excited about. And Sean, you were at the most recent KubeCon.
It was a fantastic.
Talk a little bit about some of the kind of increase in attendance that we've seen.
At KubeCon, the show basically is growing about 20 to 25% per year of attendance. In the days you always hear like VMware talks about basically cloud native architecture, design cloud native applications. cloud native application, basically all it really means is containerization. That means I can run it in a cloud, or I can also run it on-prem. But much of the application development space is now moving into a containerization, which allows you to provide microservices. And also I can now make my upgrade cycles easier, because instead of trying to upgrade the monolith of the whole application, I'm just upgrading one facet or one small section of it, and they're all independent of each other and just work together. So a lot of development that way. And I think Gartner actually announced that they believe that 2025 is the year of the container. And that thing, when they announced it, what they talked through was they now expect to see, basically we call COTS, custom off the shelf applications, or apps that you just go buy or purchase, now to be delivered container based. Instead of me installing an executable, I'm going to have to set up containers on my on-prem basically to go run this application, and they're going to run a Docker or Kubernetes type environment. The great news, of course, is the VMstore we have in 5.6 release, we had a CSI driver or container storage interface release in this project as well, which allows you to go ahead and have all the insights you have per VM for your container realms as well. So we basically pre-built our systems for you. So when you start having to support applications, either from an app dev perspective or even apps you purchase that are containerized, you can still run them on the VMstore and get all the features that you love from the VMstore to work with your container environments.
Yeah, it's a whole new world for a lot of us that are kind of in this kind of VM-centric method of thinking, right? But this is a huge area of growth within IT and development in general. So being able to did I just say that twice? That was weird. Being able to support that type of environment was an important development cycle for us, and I think we've done a really good job with it. But it's a bit of a nuance that you have to understand, kind of a whole different way of doing things, and that's why one of the reasons why we'll be on the ground at KubeCon Europe, and we were on the ground at the most recent KubeCon in the U.S. To kind of educate people about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I have a feeling, I don't know this for sure, but I have a feeling that an upcoming Geek Out will go through this in some detail. I'm excited about that, actually. It's going to be really, really cool. So just keep your eye on. I don't know if it'll be the one in March, but don't want to make promises. But I have a feeling it's going to be one of the upcoming ones real soon now. So Sean, any closing comments? I know we're a little short on time. No more questions, but anything close?
I think we're looking good. I've covered all the things I wanted to, and if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to your sales teams, and if they can't answer it, they'll come to me and we'll get you an answer.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate you. It was fun to talk about the weather too. That was kind of cool, the polar vortex happening. But hey, just keep your eye out for notifications about not just the next Geek Out, but whether or not you were selected as the Tintri winner. And we will see you next time on Geek Out. Appreciate it, everyone.